see how serious our spiritual marriages are to us.
Welcome to my channel, Meri Brown and Robyn Brown's lack of friendship, or their relationship, is going to be dissected to a degree on the upcoming episode on Sunday. On Sister Wives, this is going to be from more than a year ago, so we have to kind of remember that Meri is more removed now than she was then when she's talking to Jen and when this conversation happens. But Meri did once she left. Cody was able to sort of get out of the cloud of living under a narcissist and start to think about and analyze her relationships with the people within her family, and Cody and Robyn did a number on Meri Brown for the past 15 years. People have watched the show and they've been told a story that may or may not be true. And today, what we're seeing is some of the women are having different points of view about what they experienced while they were living in this family, and we're learning about some of the disparities that occurred between certain women and certain children and different financial discrepancies that occurred, but the biggest issue in all of polygamy. And what I think is important to highlight is that whoever is the legal wife will almost always have more financial benefits than the wives that are not the legal wives. Because the legal wife is under the law where the husband would have their primary residence, and so while Meri was Cody's legal wife, she lived a different lifestyle, and she had a lot more responsibility. Because as the legal wife, her husband was not only cheating on her under the law, he was also fathering children outside of marriage, and they were living polygamy. And in the Utah at the time that this was all happening, she could have been prosecuted because she allowed her husband to take other wives. Even though they were already married, it's a lot of burden to put on a woman, when really it's the man that's doing it right. And I think for years it's been hard for us to decipher like what's the truth versus what's reality. We were able to feel and sort of see some of the tension that existed on the show. And we could tell that things between Meri and Robyn were not as they seemed. And most of us could tell that Robyn was manipulating her and also controlling a lot more in what occurred in the family than how they showed it on the show for years. And sometimes the wives would speak up and make comments, kind of giving us insight or remind us that, Cody, you're spending a lot of time with Robyn. But then Robyn's own behavior made it difficult to ignore, because she would often become the person that spoke for Cody. She would be the one that in interviews would speak up for him, would try to divert questions, would try to keep the women on a narrative. And it was very clear for most people that Robyn and Cody were the ones driving the narrative, and the rest of them had to go along with it. And because of that, for most of us, it's extremely hard to know what was said on the show, then if it was true or not. And then you have to add the layer of they're all in a cult. They're all taught to lie for the cult, and they're all taught to make it look, they're doing a show to try to make polygamy look better. And so there's a lot of performance happening, right? So Meri's relationship with Robyn and how Robyn came into the family has been completely misconstrued on the show. Meri did not pick Robyn. Meri did not tell Cody to marry Robyn Cody. And Robyn admitted just earlier this season that they met before Meri was ever involved in fact. Cody had eyes for Robyn, and then basically used Meri to get Robyn. Not that Meri sought Robyn out. Meri had that realization this season when she heard them talk about how they met. Before she ever met them, she was told for a lot of years that they met through her. They lied to her, just like on the show, they made us believe, or tried to make us believe, that the divorce was Meri's idea when it wasn't. The storylines often were not true. They were storylines for a show, and they hid a lot of what was happening behind the scenes. And until their contracts come up, they're still sort of bound by this gag of like not exposing everything. So for now, we're only getting the half-truths, and we're starting to get leaks of it happening, right? Like yesterday, Meri admits or confirms to Tamron that her biggest issues in the family and the most tension she had was with Robyn, not with Christine or with Janelle, that she had to look to them about what she was going to speak or say on the show, on the tell all, because they were controlling the narrative. She confirmed she didn't want the divorce. They did so. In time, we're probably going to hear the whole story about what happened, about how she was bullied into divorcing because it was what Robyn wanted and what Cody wanted her to do so that Robyn could be his legal wife.
If Cody's not willing to buy me out, then I'm gonna have to do something with it. But
because Robyn wanted to be the one in charge, Meri was put in an uncomfortable situation. Because even before the show started, she was almost out the door. She had almost left Cody right before this first season started, and Janelle had left him before that too. So the family was already fractured. And this concept they had one house and all the kids lived together is not true, because Janelle left for 5 years. So with that said, Meri is no having to come out of a fog. And I'll say this, when you're with a narcissist, it's hard to see the reality and it's hard to make sense of what happened. Then add in the layer of cult programming and then have add in the layer of them being told for years that they are just supposed to submit and be keep sweet and not think about their emotions, and they're not allowed to have emotions and they just need to obey the priesthood authority. And that was Meri's life like. And then when Cody and Robyn became a unit, they became them against everyone else, and Robyn wanted that control. And this is sort of how Jen sees it. Check it out. Decided that he had this new person that was like this new insider with him, then you shiny toy. Yeah, and that it just became them against everybody else. And then she'd act like she was your best friend and then completely ignore you and hurt your feelings. Like, that's really up. Like, either be an Orden. It's funny to hear her say that she was the new shiny object, because that's what a lot of ex-polygamous women or plural wives or whatever you want to call the women that leave the survivors say about when a husband or a man takes on a new woman. She becomes like the new toy, the new shiny object, and they liken it to like a child with a toy. Like, once a kid gets a new toy, that's all they care about. They don't care about the other toys, and the other toys sort of go into the toy box. And, you know, the women are very objectified and dehumanized in that respect in this cult. And, you know, he did very much just focus his attention and time on Robyn. And I think one thing that I'm going to be interested to see is if in time we start to hear from them the truth of how Cody actually was when the cameras were off, because none of them have actually talked about how he would always compliment Robyn's figure and her thinness and her age and her attractiveness in front of the other women and call her like a supermodel in front of everyone. And that, you know, she was the young wife, she was his trophy wife. They said it the first season a little bit and joked about it, but that never ended that prevailing way. He treated her never ended. He very much made them feel like they weren't as good as Robyn because he valued her size and her appearance more than the other women. And, you know, here Jen is saying, you know, this is where he wanted to be. This is who he wanted to be with. And then they became this unit, right? And then Robyn also kind of ditched Meri. I mean, if you read Becoming Sister Wives, Meri's chapters are so brutally honest to a fault. And she speaks about how Robyn befriended her, made her feel like they were going to be best friends, kind of love bombed her. And then as soon as Robyn and Cody's like courtship started, Robyn had no time for Meri anymore, and it just became about Robyn and Cody. So she felt teased. I mean, she said that in their book from 2012. So I think there's still this like, you have to give them time to get through the junk, and then you have to get them comfortable to speak the truth, because they've lied for so many years. And I think there's shame in the lying. I think there's shame in people thinking they're frauds. And I think it's awesome that Meri even said that. Like, a lot of people say that Robyn is a fraud now. They say, I don't think that. But she still said it. Have you ever heard any one of them say Robyn's a fraud until today? Not me. She said it. And then she said, but I don't see it that way. Well, you still said it, so you're thinking it. And I think the wheels are turning here now. Meri's take on their relationship versus Robyn's take is interesting. And Robyn is going to blame Meri, which is of course what Robyn's going to do. I know that mine and Robyn's relationship was a good one, and I felt very solid in it, like we were very close. And then it started. There was a divide. Always had Meri's back, even when people were plotting against her, ignoring her. And I never felt a divide other than when she moved. That was when things changed. She changed it after that. But I always cared. I think it's going to take Robyn Alabotomy to actually admit that she contributed to something in some way. It's hard when you have a conflict with someone, because everyone, when they're in the middle of a conflict, obviously feels like they're justified in their feelings, right? And then there's sometimes in conflict where someone is actually in the wrong, right? There's someone that actually did something wrong and they hurt someone.
They're purposefully leaving me out of their lives to punish me for a crime I did not commit.
And all they need to do is apologize and say they're sorry. And I can think of on Zero Hand Show many times I heard Robyn ever apologize to anyone ever. I can think of times when the other women had to apologize to Robyn, though Christine was constantly graveling at Robyn to try to make things better, and was always reminded that she was being a bully. And to be clear, Christine actually didn't like that Cody called her a bully, but she admitted she was a bully back in the day. She actually admitted that. She used to taunt Meri about the kids and the number of kids she had. She told Meri to her face. She hoped she had a miscarriage. They had fights about that kind of stuff. She didn't want Meri to steal her thunder. She would get, you know, according to Meri. whenever she'd get pregnant, she would kind of rub it in Meri's space. And that's how they hurt each other, right? And that dynamic doesn't go away because you add another woman, right? But at least on the show, and again, it's contrived, and it's for Astery, we saw some of the women apologize and take accountability. Specifically, we saw Meri repeatedly try to take accountability with the women about things that happened before the show was on the on-air. And I think some of the issues that happened before the show, a lot of space was given to Janelle and to Christine for their grievances, but there was not a lot of opportunity for Meri to share her perspective. And I think because of that, we get a very one-sided narrative of what the other people think Meri did to them, but we don't hear from Meri why things were the way they were, right? And quite honestly, in polygamy, what the men do is they will scapegoat the women, and so they will allow the women to yell at each other and pit the women against each other. And Cody grilled and drilled into these kids and women that Meri was the bad one, even though he was the one that was doing it all, even though he was the one that was controlling the money. Not Meri, even though he was the one that was dictating where they moved when what happened, the living conditions they lived in, that was all Cody, and he used Meri as a scapegoat. And when Meri stopped obeying him, they turned on her. And that's what you saw in real time happen on the show. And so I'm always super skeptical when people start talking about how horrible she is, because I think, well, Cody's been telling them that for years. And there's times when I listen to McKeely talk about Meri, and I'll think that's what Cody says about Meri, right? And then you'll hear the kids say, well, we didn't even know Meri was that bad until Robyn came into the family and made us believe that she was. What are you talking about? So you didn't know she was bad until Robyn showed up? That sounds to me like Robyn's manipulating people to not be on Meri's side. And narcissists do that, they run smear campaigns. So I think we always have to take with a grain of salt the perspectives we hear. And in this case, I will say unequivocally that Meri doesn't need to apologize to Robyn for anything. And it's true that Robyn changed as soon as she got her legal marriage. It was like everything was, Meri didn't exist. Anymore, no one existed but her and Cody. She played the game until she got the legal marriage in 2015. And then once she got the legal marriage in 2015, it was like nobody else existed. And Janelle at the time called it and said, it's like you think. You're going to go run off into the sunset. And that's exactly what Cody did. I mean, come on, can you even think that it was anything else than that? And I know there's some people that are like, well, I think that was a storyline in Big Love. And it might have been, but they had to come up with something to justify why she was going to do the divorce. But the divorce wasn't because it was from Big Love, and the storyline wasn't from Big Love. It was because Cody wanted to divorce Meri and make Robyn his legal wife. And then yesterday, some of you said, well, if legal marriages didn't matter and the spiritual relationships mattered more, then why would there ever be a legal marriage? And that's exactly right. Like, you guys have a pulse on that. You get it. The legal marriages matter, unequivocally. They matter because women that are legal wives are the primary family unit with the man. They're on the taxes with them, and they're on the deed of the home with the man. They share the bank accounts with the man. In most states, community. Property is how assets are divided.
With Christine. And so she's making this excuse about the boys.
Is that what she said?
No.
And so she's the DV divider of assets. And I know Meri gets a lot off flack, but those were years and years and years ago, right? And Janelle today says, Meri was fair. Meri made sure that everyone got their share. She never doubted that Meri would advocate for them, and she that changed with Robyn. And because Meri had been so good to her, she wanted to make sure that Meri didn't get screwed in Coyote Pass. There was fights over money in the early days, but once they got to the show, they were all under contract. And they all had individual incomes. They were being paid episodically per episode for a while, and they would get paid each. So Meri got a salary, Janelle got a salary, Christine got a salary, and Robyn got a salary. And Meri, she worked her ass off on the show. I mean, she drove so many of the storylines because so many other people in the family didn't want to work. Robyn didn't want to work. She didn't want to be on the camera. So Meri had to hold down 3 jobs, right? So once they started making money, like this concept that like there was fights over kids getting fed is just a sign. And then when they lived in Wyoming, sure, they definitely were poor, but all of them were poor. Let's be honest, Meri wasn't living wealthy. They were living very poorly, all of them. And all of them went without food, including Meri. I'll tell you the story that I've told before. But I have someone that was friends with them, and she went over to their trailer one day with the women there, and they only had fried beans, like Reford beans. Cans of that in their cupboard, that's it. No food other than that Meri too, so it wasn't just Janelle's kids going hungry. They all had struggles with food, including Meri. There was no money. And then that's when Janelle left for 6 years. So Meri has made a lot of sacrifices. Meri's also contributed a lot of money to the show, to the family Robyn